The American Dream in Stone, a journey through the history of American architecture. Imagine standing in the middle of New York City. Above you, steel and glass towers disappear into the clouds. Beneath your feet, millions of people rush through streets designed more than a century ago. Somewhere nearby, an old brick building stands quietly between modern skyscrapers. Now imagine traveling backward through time. The skyscrapers disappear. The paved streets become dirt roads. The cities shrink into small settlements. And eventually, the buildings of America are no longer designed to impress the world. They are designed simply to survive. This is the story of American architecture. But it is not just a story about buildings. It is a story about ambition. About wealth and poverty. About immigration, war, technology, religion, rebellion, and dreams. Because every generation of Americans built something that reflected what they believed the future should look like. And sometimes they built things the world had never seen before. Chapter 1. Before America had a name, long before the United States existed, sophisticated architecture already covered the land. Across what is now the American Southwest, indigenous peoples constructed remarkable settlements from stone, adobe, wood, and earth. At places such as Chaco Canyon, enormous structures were carefully planned around plazas and astronomical alignments. In the Mississippi Valley, indigenous societies constructed massive earthen mounds. These were not random piles of dirt. They were monumental landscapes. Some represented political power, others were connected to ceremonies, religion, burial, or astronomy. Architecture in North America therefore began long before European colonization. The first great American architects were indigenous peoples. They built according to their environments. Desert communities learned to work with heat and limited water. Forest societies used abundant timber. Communities living in colder regions developed structures adapted to harsh winters. Architecture was already expressing one of America's most important characteristics: adaptation. Then Europeans arrived, and everything began to change. Chapter 2. The architecture of survival. During the 1600s, European settlers established permanent colonies along the Atlantic coast. They brought architectural traditions from England, France, Spain, and the Netherlands, but they couldn't simply copy European buildings. America was different. The climate was different. The materials were different, and survival was difficult. Early colonial houses were often small, practical, and heavily influenced by local resources. In New England, timber became one of the most important materials. In the South, architecture responded to heat, humidity, and plantation agriculture. Spanish settlements in Florida and the Southwest developed completely different traditions, often using thick adobe walls. Dutch settlers influenced architecture around New Amsterdam. French settlers brought their own traditions to places such as Louisiana. So even before the United States became a country, there was no single American architectural style. There were many, and that diversity would become one of America's defining characteristics. But architecture was also revealing something darker. Colonial society was deeply unequal. Large plantation houses represented enormous wealth. Yet that wealth was supported by enslaved labor. The architecture of colonial America therefore contained both aspiration and exploitation. Beautiful buildings could hide brutal realities. and that contradiction would remain part of American architectural history for centuries. Chapter 3. A new nation needs a new image. Then came the American Revolution. The colonies declared independence. A new country was born, but the new United States had a problem. It needed an identity. What should an American building look like? The young nation looked toward the ancient world. Greece, Rome, Republican ideals. Democracy, liberty. The architecture of the new government began adopting classical forms. Columns, domes, symmetry, monumental stone buildings. The message was deliberate. America wanted to appear powerful, rational, and permanent. Washington, D.C. became the greatest architectural experiment of the new republic. The Capitol became one of its most recognizable symbols. The White House adopted a restrained classical language. Public buildings increasingly looked like monuments rather than ordinary houses. Architecture was being used as political messaging. A government building wasn't simply a place where politicians worked. It was supposed to tell citizens, this nation is here to stay. Chapter 4. The city explodes. For decades, America remained largely rural. Then the Industrial Revolution accelerated everything. Factories appeared. Railroads connected distant regions. Immigrants arrived in enormous numbers. Cities expanded at breathtaking speed. New York grew. Chicago grew. Boston grew. Philadelphia grew. And suddenly, land became extremely valuable. Architects faced a problem. If cities could not expand outward fast enough, they had to expand upward. But there was a limit. Traditional masonry buildings could only rise so high before their own weight became dangerous. Then technology changed the rules. Steel, elevators, modern engineering. Together, they created something extraordinary. The skyscraper. Chapter 5. Chicago builds the future. After the Great Chicago Fire of 1871, much of the city had to be rebuilt. Instead of simply restoring the past, architects and engineers began experimenting. Chicago became a laboratory. Architects such as Louis Sullivan argued that tall buildings required new architectural ideas. The skyscraper was not simply a taller version of an old building. It was something new. Steel frames allowed structures to rise higher. Elevators made upper floors practical. Large windows brought more light into buildings. Commercial architecture began changing rapidly. Chicago's skyline became a symbol of American industrial confidence. The message was powerful. America did not need to imitate the old world forever. It could invent a new one. Chapter 6. New York reaches for the sky. Chicago may have pioneered the skyscraper, but New York turned it into an obsession. By the early 20th century, Manhattan was becoming a vertical city. Buildings competed for height. Architects competed for attention. Businesses wanted headquarters that looked powerful. Banks wanted monuments to wealth. Newspapers wanted towers that could be seen from miles away. Then came one of the most recognizable architectural eras in American history, Art Deco. The style was bold, geometric, elegant, modern, it perfectly matched the energy of the machine age. And then, in 1931, one building seemed to summarize the entire American ambition. The Empire State Building. It rose more than 1,400 feet above Manhattan. At the time, it was the tallest building in the world. But the story behind it is even more remarkable. It was constructed during the Great Depression. America was suffering through economic disaster. Millions were unemployed, yet workers continued building upward. The Empire State Building became more than a skyscraper. It became a symbol of determination, a reminder that even during economic darkness, America was still trying to reach the sky. Chapter 7: Architecture Meets the Machine While Skyscrapers Transformed Cities. Another architectural revolution was happening in American homes. One of its greatest figures was Frank Lloyd Wright. Wright rejected the idea that buildings should simply imitate historical European styles. Creations was falling water. The house was designed directly over a waterfall. Instead of turning away from nature, the building embraced it. Stone, concrete, glass, water, trees, and landscape became part of one composition. Wright's work changed the way Americans thought about houses. A home didn't have to be a box surrounded by land. It could become part of the landscape itself, and his influence would reach far beyond. America. Chapter 8: The Architecture of Immigration. There is another story hidden inside American cities. Walk through almost any major American city and you'll find neighborhoods shaped by immigrants. Italian neighborhoods. Irish neighborhoods. Jewish neighborhoods. Chinese communities. German districts. Polish communities. Later, Mexican, Korean, Vietnamese, Indian, Caribbean, African, and countless other communities transformed America's urban landscape. They brought food. Languages. Religious traditions. Businesses. And architecture. Churches, synagogues, temples, restaurants, theaters, markets, and houses became physical evidence of America's changing population. The American city became something unusual. It wasn't designed by one culture. It was continuously redesigned by millions of people. That is why an American city can sometimes feel like several countries layered on top of one another. Chapter 9: The Great Depression and the Architecture of Hope. Then came the crash. In 1929, the American economy collapsed. Architecture changed because society changed. Luxury became difficult to justify. Millions of families struggled. The government began investing heavily in infrastructure and public projects. Bridges. Dams. Schools. Post offices. Courthouses. Public buildings. Architecture became part of an attempt to rebuild confidence. One of the most famous examples was the Golden Gate Bridge. Construction began during the 1930s. At the time, crossing the enormous Golden Gate Strait seemed almost impossible. Yet engineers did it. The bridge opened in 1937. Its enormous towers and suspension cables transformed San Francisco's skyline. It became one of the most recognizable structures in America. Once again, architecture was telling a story. America could build through crisis. Chapter 10: After the War. America changes again. World War II transformed the United States. Factories expanded. Millions of workers moved. Technology advanced. And after the war, millions of Americans wanted something new. A house, a family, a car. A suburban life. The American suburb exploded. Developers constructed enormous neighborhoods of relatively affordable houses. The detached suburban home became one of the most powerful symbols of post-war America. But it also changed the physical shape of the country. Cities expanded outward. highways connected suburbs to downtowns. Shopping centers appeared. Cars became essential. The architecture of everyday life was changing. America was no longer simply a collection of dense cities and small towns. It was becoming a vast landscape of suburbs, highways, malls, offices, and increasingly standardized homes. The dream had changed. The skyscraper represented corporate ambition. The suburban house represented personal success. Both were parts of the same American dream. Chapter 11. The Age of Modernism. After World War II, American architecture became increasingly modern. Glass. Steel. Concrete. Minimal decoration. Simple geometric forms. Architects began asking a new question: what should a modern building look like? One answer was the glass office tower. Corporate America embraced modern architecture. Buildings became cleaner, taller, and more international in appearance. The skyline of cities such as New York changed dramatically. The old, decorative skyscrapers were joined by minimalist towers. Architecture was becoming increasingly connected to business. A building wasn't only a monument. It was a machine for working. Thousands of employees could occupy a single structure. Air conditioning, elevators, fluorescent lighting, and advanced mechanical systems allowed architects to create enormous interior spaces. The modern office building was born. Chapter 12. The Space Age. Then America looked beyond Earth. The space race influenced almost everything. Science, technology, movies, fashion, and architecture. The future became a cultural obsession. Buildings began experimenting with unusual shapes. Curves, domes, geometric structures, huge glass surfaces. Architecture wanted to look futuristic. Perhaps the most dramatic example was the rise of enormous civic and cultural buildings that appeared to come from another planet. The idea was simple. If humans were going to the moon, their buildings should look like the future too. Architecture became a physical expression of technological optimism. Chapter 13. When old buildings became worth saving, but eventually, America began to realize something. Progress could destroy history. As cities modernized, historic buildings were demolished. Entire neighborhoods disappeared. Old train stations vanished. Historic theaters were replaced. Then preservation movements grew stronger. People began asking, should every old building be destroyed simply because a newer building can be more profitable? The answer, increasingly, was no. Historic preservation became a major part of American architectural culture. Buildings that had once seemed outdated became valuable again. Old neighborhoods became destinations. Historic houses became museums. Industrial warehouses became apartments. Factories became cultural spaces. America began learning that architecture could have value beyond function. A building could carry memory. Chapter 14. The architecture of power. Some American buildings are famous because they are beautiful. Others are famous because they represent power. The Pentagon, the Capitol, the White House. Wall Street skyscrapers, corporate headquarters. Courthouses. Government complexes. These buildings communicate authority. Their scale matters. Their materials matter. Their location matters. Even empty space can communicate power. A monumental staircase can make visitors feel small. A massive dome can create a sense of permanence. A Fortress-like wall can communicate security. Architecture can influence emotion without saying a single word. That is why governments, corporations, banks, universities, and religious institutions have always invested heavily in architecture. Buildings speak, sometimes louder than politicians. Chapter 15. America after 9/11. On September 11, 2001, the American architectural landscape changed forever. The World Trade Center towers were destroyed. The event transformed not only New York, but also the way architects thought about security, public space, memorials, and skyscrapers. The rebuilding of Lower Manhattan became an enormous architectural and political project. The goal was not simply to replace the towers. It was to create a place that remembered what had been lost while allowing the city to continue moving forward. The result included new towers, public spaces, transportation infrastructure, and the National September 11th Memorial. Architecture became an instrument of memory. A place could now serve two purposes simultaneously: to remember the past and to imagine the future. Chapter 16. The American City Today. Today, American architecture is more diverse than ever. In Los Angeles, glass towers stand beside Spanish Revival houses. In New York, centuries of architectural styles exist within a few blocks. Chicago continues its tradition of architectural experimentation. Washington remains filled with monuments and government buildings. New Orleans preserves architectural traditions shaped by French, Spanish, African, Caribbean, and American cultures. Across the country, old industrial buildings are being transformed. Factories become offices. Warehouses become apartments. Railway stations become public spaces. Historic theaters are restored. And new skyscrapers continue to rise. But a new challenge has appeared. Climate change. American architects are increasingly thinking about energy efficiency, flooding, extreme heat, renewable energy, and resilient infrastructure. The question is no longer simply, how high can we build? It is also, how long can our buildings survive? And what kind of world will they create? Chapter 17. The future of American architecture. The future may look very different from the cities we know today. Buildings could become smarter. Sensors could monitor energy use. Artificial intelligence could help design structures. Robotics could construct buildings faster. New materials could reduce environmental impact. Entire neighborhoods could be redesigned around walking, public transportation, and green spaces. But technology alone will not determine the future. People will, because architecture has always reflected society. When America was a young republic, it built monuments inspired by democracy. When industry exploded, it built skyscrapers. When automobiles transformed daily life, it built suburbs. When technology became a national obsession, it built futuristic structures. And now, as climate and sustainability become increasingly important, architecture is beginning to respond again. The final chapter, a country written in buildings. So what is American architecture? Is it the Capitol, the Empire State Building, Falling Water, the Golden Gate Bridge, a suburban house, a New York apartment, a New Orleans shotgun house, a Chicago skyscraper, a Native American pueblo? The answer is all of them. American architecture is not one style. It is a conversation between generations. Every building leaves something behind. Some buildings survive for centuries, others disappear within decades. But even demolished buildings can leave an influence. An idea survives, a technique survives, a photograph survives, a memory survives, and perhaps that is the most fascinating thing about architecture. People build buildings, then buildings shape people, A courthouse can teach us what a society considers justice. A skyscraper can reveal what a company believes about power. Home can reveal what a family considers success. A monument can reveal what a nation wants future. Generations to remember, and a city skyline can tell the story of an entire civilization. America's architectural history is therefore much more than a collection of famous structures. It is the physical record of a nation constantly reinventing itself. From indigenous earthworks to colonial settlements, from revolutionary monuments to industrial skyscrapers, from Art Deco towers to modern glass cities, from suburban homes to sustainable buildings. The story keeps changing, and the construction never really stops, because somewhere in America, right now, an architect is drawing something that has never existed before. A new building, a new neighborhood, a new idea, and perhaps decades from now, someone will stand in front of it and ask the same question we asked at the beginning. What does this building say about the people who created it? The answer will be written in steel, in stone, in glass, in concrete, and in the spaces between them, Because if you want to understand American history, you don't always need to open a history book. Sometimes you just need to look up, and look at the buildings